Sorry, Mary, you are muted.
Yes, it's now recording.
All right. Thank you so much. So my name is Dr. Joyce Wangari Ngugi. Thank you for the kind introduction, Mary. So glad to be a member of PPAK, the Positive Psychology Association of Kenya. And I think this is my third webinar. So I'm looking forward to having an interactive hour with all of us today. So in my main training, I am a clinical psychologist and counseling psychologist. I have also made a foray into a positive psychology field, and it has been quite a wonderful addition to my career because in our main training years ago, it wasn't central, but now we know that positive psychology is, the fourth movement, they say, in psychology. And so the other work I do, aside from psychology work, is I am a research mentor. So I oversee about 200,000 scholars in online and offline platforms, just providing people with support on their research, whether they're in school or in the field. I'm quite excited. There's a few good grants coming up, like the Templeton one. So if any of us would like to work on those, it would be nice to do that. So let's go to the next slide. Mary, are you working my slides? Thank you so much. So we have 3 learning outcomes for today. Today's topic is on measuring character strengths, or how do you measure character? And we will be asking ourselves exactly how we measure character. And at the end of the session, you'll be able to demonstrate the ability to define. So we'll definitely take some definitions of character strengths and virtues. And then secondly, we will be able to demonstrate the ability to measure. So basically the crux of this session is measuring your own character strength. And then we will understand what we mean when we talk about the golden mean of character strength, okay? Is there a standard? Is there an ideal? Is there a perfect limit? We say this person is of good character, for example, okay? So I know a lot of times people use a lot of evaluative language when talking about character strength, and that's okay because we are talking about character strength as part of who you are. So what character strengths are the parts of your personality which help you to live a happy and a helpful life. So I'm sure we've all heard of character development. I'll be talking about that a bit later. I'm very interested in humor. So if you're Kenyan, you've heard of character development. But just tell me, do you think, let's make this interactive now. So do you think character strengths are inherited or learned? So I'd like to take some sharing in the chat. Just type in the chat. Do you think that they are inherited or learned or both? Let's see. So already we have some answers. Learned, both, learned. Okay. This is the very famous debate in the field of psychology called nature-nurture debate. So do you think these things are part of your genetics? Do you have inherited traits in your character? Or do you think it's all about social factors and the environment and socialization and, depends on where you grew up? Maybe you'll say something like that. So if we would take a tally, I can see currently we have a tie. We have 3 learned and 3 both. Okay, now we are switching to both. Okay, both. I think both is winning. If this was a vote, both would be declared the winner of the tally. It is always a very lively debate inside the field of psychology when we talk about nature versus nurture. And if you could picture a rectangle when we say nature is what genetics, endowments, personality, temperament has brought to your life. And so that is just limited up to the shorter side of the rectangle. But the longer side of a rectangle would be considered a nurture, which we know in the field of psychology that nurture does have a very high influence. But to pick one or the other, I don't think would be the goal, is to say it's really a bit of both. So I agree with those who say both. So obviously, character strengths are the positive traits we associate with goodness. They are possessed by people of all ages, all over the world. So every single person has character strengths or goodness. Remember, this has to do with morality for sure. So this has been appreciated over time by ages, through the ages, by different cultures. Philosophers have talked about character. A lot of religious traditions actually extol character strength, whether you are in Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Judaism, African religions, and others. And therefore, character strengths are displayed in our thoughts and feelings and actions. So that is just a little bit more about definitions of what character strengths are. Of course, we'll be unpacking this and elaborating that more as we go along. Yeah, keep bringing your answers. Do you think they are inherited or learned? Both. Both is the winner. Okay, next. So there are so many questions here that I hear every single day. How does one measure character? How do you determine someone's character? So how do you measure yourself for a guy if you're a lady, or for a lady if you're a guy? And if you're seeking a job and they're looking for a person of sound character, what does that look like? How do you check that you fit? Or maybe a licensing body, and I will give you an example shortly. What does it mean when we say you're a well-measured person? Okay. What does it mean to evaluate a character? A lot of us did set books if you were in the 844 system. Then we did literature, and we also did Fasihi. And so in literature and Fasihi, we unpacked characters in stories, and we actually evaluated them for a lot of things. And if you recall, there was a lot of synthesis, and we had to write essays on characters in the plot of a story. Although this presentation is not about that kind of characterology in the field of theater, but how exactly do you define strength of character? What are the qualities that can be measured? What are they called? Okay. So what is the most common character strength? What do you think? You know, these things have been researched now, and we now have body of data. And what are the strong points in a person? How do you get to those strong points? So again, not only for individuals, for organizations, how do you measure character building in an organization? Do we have organizations renowned for certain character traits? If I give you some brands, maybe you'll tell me their character. What is the character of the Kenya police, for example? What's the character of Coca-Cola? And some of that character is alluded in their colors or in their mannerisms or in the way they go about doing things. And those are some questions that we are seeking to answer today. Next. So here's an example. Look at the last part of this slide that is about the newest law in the field. So in Kenya, we now have a board that is enacting a law that was promulgated in 2014. And for you to be registered as a psychologist and a counselor in Kenya, Part D, Section 23 of the Act says that you've got to satisfy the board that you are a person of good moral character and fit and proper to be registered as a counselor or a psychologist in Kenya. So I just wonder, what evaluation rubric will the board have? Which marking scheme will they say, okay, these are the people who are, you know, satisfactory, of good character, and can be registered as psychologists? These are minimum standards for registration of psychologists in Kenya. So this is just an example. Many times you'll see this in job advertisements, you know, even when people are talking about dating and marriage, you're always checking how to assess somebody's character. Next. So again, what is the threshold of good moral character? We talk about the golden mean of character strength. So aside from a perfect character, we really talk about that we do have, you know, a certain golden mean, or at least some identified. We talk about the 24 identified character strengths, okay? Some of the questions are like, how do you differentiate a character flaw from a mental illness? This one will interest those of us who are in clinical work. So just quickly in the chat again, how can you tell the difference between mental illness and bad character? So if you can type in the chat, how can you tell the difference between mental illness and bad character? So if you don't mind, you can answer that. Then some questions on the history. When did the science of character strengths begin? Who even started the movement called character strengths movement? And then we talk about the attributes of person who has good character. Okay, so if you are hiring someone, would you rather take a very inexperienced person that has a great attitude and character, or a know-it-all who is highly qualified? That is almost a rhetorical question, because most of you here will lean towards, the person who has fit and proper character. And then where can you get a character assessment? So those are some interesting questions. And we will see the importance of character strength. And these are the questions that are in everyday life. I thought to compile them and kind of summarize them in this slide. Next. So some questions I've asked you to type in the chat. How do you differentiate a character flaw from a mental illness? Some people will say in Swahili, hiyo ni kujitakia tu, yeye ndio anataka. Or maybe this person is, previous slide, please. Or maybe this person is not well. How do you tell the difference, actually? So when we talk about character and personality, character is about moral attributes or qualities, but personality is about the collection of cognitive abilities, behaviors, beliefs, ideologies, and attitudes. So to identify one's character, we have to observe somebody for some time, okay? But, for personality, it's easy to identify traits by just observing physical conduct. So you see the difference? And another one is that in character, it refers to moral and ethical conduct, while personality refers to outward behaviors and impressions created on others. Finally, character is important in the overall behavioral patterns in a person, but personality is significant in defining the type of person that this person is. So those are just some differences from different authors on character and personality. Let me see the chat if anybody has been able to tell us the difference between mental illness and bad character. How do you know if someone is just doing it on purpose or out of bad character, or somebody is actually sick? I don't know if we have any clinical people in the house. I'll just take one or two answers. How do you differentiate? So just a critical question to make us think. Or maybe we are still thinking about it. How can you tell the difference between mental illness and bad character? I'm curious to know the answers. Just type, because we are many, but later we'll have an interactive Q&A. Okay, so somebody says, I guess you would have to do an actual assessment. Yes, thank you, Dr. Carol Chakwa. Anybody else? Yeah, how do you know the difference between someone is sick or somebody has what we call a character flaw or character defect? Okay. So obviously, in our field, we are quite adept at using surveys. We also use informal and formal assessments. So I would also say behavioral observation would be good, checking through with other people. Natasha asks if there'll be a recording. So that one I will leave to our moderator at the end, who will tell us how we can access that. So let me take some more sharing. Anyone else? Okay. Yeah, can someone have a bad character but good personality? Oh, wow, lovely question. Yeah, we've said that character builds over time. Personality can be also your aura. Just when we say personality in everyday language, we're just talking about how you show up, but obviously somebody can have a bad character, because we will see later that character is really who you are. Really who you are, sometimes even when nobody is looking. Your real character, yeah. And you can have a good personality or outer, like persona. You can look really nothing like any of your inner character. So I think the answer is yes, Paul Kioi. Then I see Mwangi is responding to the question, subjective distress and intersubjective dysfunction. Really, really good answer. However, we know that some mental illness like personality disorders may not have distress, but generally speaking, I agree with you, Kamau Mwangi, subjective distress, that somebody knows that something is up and they feel distressed about it, except of course in the case of personality disorders, and maybe there's an interpersonal problem also going on, intersubjective or interpersonal dysfunction. Then Harriet Tunja says assessment. Yeah, DSM-5 is a good guide. I guess we are all talking like experts, but on the streets, of course, we use different ways. We use behavioral observation. We ask about people. We kind of take a full history from different angles from people in the life of that person. Sometimes you check out people and maybe your own observation. And then maybe now in a professional sense, obviously a survey, a test, an assessment procedure will be able to tell the difference. Thank you for all your contributions. They were quite good. Next. So again, just in summary, personality may be more of what actually we talk about the 5 ocean traits. The ocean is an acronym just for the big 5 traits of personality: openness, conscientiousness, extraversion, agreeableness, neuroticism. And then temperament, we can talk about temperament in personality: sanguine, choleric, melancholic, phlegmatic. There's so many theories on personality. So, but the main issue here, or the difference, is the idea of maybe being liked or how something is said. But character is about being respected, what you end up being known for, your legacy. And we'll talk about these character strengths shortly. It's about ethics and morals and what is said, okay? So obviously, character is based on principles. It is actually how you are. It focuses on how to actually be. So it revolves around all of these character strengths that we will unpack shortly. However, personality is how it appears. And it's, maybe when we talk about personality in everyday language, it's just about like PR and how you show up in your image to people, okay? So next. So who invented character strengths? That is an answer you need to keep in mind. So scientists came up with a list of character strengths that are now known the world over. So there were 2 scientists, Peterson and Seligman, in the early 2000s. There was an institute called Values in Action that supported pivotal work, and there was a study. It had 55 scientists on board. That was a huge, huge, huge meta-analytic type of a study. And it was 3 years. It took 3 years. And out of that study, the book there, I had to put the cover of that textbook that we call the textbook of positive psychology, actually. So this is the Character Strengths and Virtues Handbook and Classification book. So this is the backbone of the science of positive psychology. So why do we do positive psychology? We do it for well-being, and we can measure well-being through character strengths. So this book by Christopher Peterson and Martin Seligman in 2004 attempts to present a measure of humanist ideals of virtue, So they did it in a very empirical, rigorously scientific manner to provide us a theoretical framework for practical applications for positive psychology. Next. So we can say the Values in Action Institute actually promulgated the work of this book, because these 24 character strengths were further recognized by the founders of the institute. One of them was the author Seligman, and there was a different person called Neil Meyerson. So remember that Seligman and Meyerson actually eventually created the Values in Action Institute. And this is a very common way when inventors come up with something in order to sustain a practice over time, is to create a sort of a body where, scientists can come together. And the Values in Action Institute is actually a very important website. Today we'll be unpacking it. And we now know we can identify positive character strengths that all people have, but we all have them in varying degrees. So there's a very interesting YouTube link there, which has an amazing presentation by Dr. Neil Meyerson called A Character Strengths Revolution. And in that talk, he talks about the importance of understanding and applying character strengths to improve ourselves and our world. If any of you is coming for our AGM, this is your cheat sheet. Please listen to this video. There will be a first hour competition on how positive psychology can change the world. So if you listen to this video, you will have a very good idea of how to actually apply character strengths and improve yourself and your world. And this is one way of the PPAK is doing very well in just encouraging attendance to our AGM coming up in June. Thank you. Next. So those are the photos there, Seligman and Meyerson. So we have 24 character strengths, and you need to remember that they have domains, also called flavors or virtues. And actually on the website, these are put in a nice infographic, so you can see the infographic there. And under each of these 6 domains, we will have a couple of character strengths. So we have a virtue called wisdom, courage, humanity, justice, temperance, and transcendence. If any of you in high school used to invent mnemonics to remember all kinds of things, maybe you can come up with a song so that we are able to memorize the 6 domains of the character strengths. And if you have that song production, you can invite us to either, listen in or join in so that we can actually keep this in mind. So these are the 6 domains of values in action classification of character strengths. And we now are going to unpack each of the character strengths. So let us now look at each one of them in turn. Next. So under wisdom and knowledge, we have creativity is a character strength, curiosity, open-mindedness, love for learning, and perspective. Cognitive strengths that entail the acquisition and use of knowledge. So these are the actual character strengths, okay? Then under courage domain, we have bravery, perseverance, honesty, and enthusiasm. So it involves the exercise of will to accomplish goals in the face of opposition, both external opposition or internal opposition from within yourself, okay? Then we have another domain or flavor of virtue. We call them virtues because obviously we know the opposite of virtues is vices. So remember, for each of these character strengths, you could talk about their vice as well, okay? So humanity. Humanity is another virtue or flavor or domain. And under humanity, you have specific character strengths like love, kindness, and social intelligence. So this involves tending to and befriending others. Then we have another domain called justice. This one is about teamwork, fairness, leadership. So this underlies a healthy community life and is civic focused, okay? How do we create civil structures that actually are fair to everyone? Then temperance, forgiveness, humility, carefulness, self-control. This is a very important domain because in these character strengths, we can protect against excess, okay? Then finally, transcendence, going above. You know the word transcendence, it means going above yourself. So things like appreciation of beauty and excellence is a character strength, if you didn't know. Gratitude, hope, humor. Humor is also a way of transforming. I'm very interested in humor. I have a group. If any of you wants to join, you can contact me later. Then spirituality. So this is about forging connections to the larger universe and providing meaning. So these different domains help explain the different clusters of character strength. Which one of these domains do you think is the most common character strength? According to research, obviously you can Google and find the answer. Nowadays, you can always ask Dr. Google the answer, or you can take a guess. So which of these 6 domains do you think is the most common? And which one do you think is the least common? Which one do you think most people fail at? This has been researched, but I'm going to take your guess. Please type in the chat. I'd like to know. Oh, somebody answered the previous question. Thank you, Mkenyi. I guess a bad character is continuously there, a person who tends to rub the people the wrong way, while mental illness may be triggered by something, e.g. alcohol. Really interesting, yeah. And sometimes it's a blurry spot because it's like the chicken and the egg story. What resulted in what? You know, do we blame the alcohol always or the mental illness always? Or is it sometimes something around character? And that's why a lot of people have come up to us, and the interest in this webinar is quite good, quite high. So I had asked just now, which one do you think is the most common that most people seem to have to nail it? The most common, highest character strength, which one do you think? And then which one do you think is the least common? Which one are people really failing at? Remember, I have the answer from research, but I just want to take your guess. So Ruth Lumbasi, is this the most common or the least common? So you said strength of courage. I guess you're responding to the most common. Good. And which one do you think is the least common, Ruth? So Mkenyi thinks most people have justice as like the highest. Okay. Interesting. Now we have a variety of answers. So least common, Sister Pauline Waititu, thank you for being here. You say you you think the least common, you say is humanity. Oh, okay. So Nancy Manyara says the least common is courage. Very interesting. According to her, she thinks the most common one is temperance. Actually, you got it in reverse, but almost there. So actually the true answer from research, okay, the research that has been done so far, the most common one is courage. Okay, so Nancy, if you switch around the answers, you get that right. The least common is temperance. Most people have a problem with self-regulation, a temperate life. Somebody told me the other day, the women in Kenya are very extreme. I said, how? She said, they are not humble and they are not, you know. I said, okay. And then she said, compared to women in other places, in other parts of even Africa, I said, okay, very interesting. So according to her, she had this opinion that, you know, women in Kenya are generally not moderate or, you know, humble or, you know, they're a bit extreme. So, no, that was just somebody's opinion. I know I'm also a woman in Kenya, and I'm an African Kenyan. So that was somebody's opinion. But you see, we could actually test it. So the truth is, from research, most people fail at temperance, self-regulation, self-control, forgiveness, humility, carefulness, just they're a bit excess, but a lot of people are really good in courage, and you'll see in many, many families, people will be exalting somebody of courage, and that's what makes, you know, those people who are not so courageous, they are really singled out because that's a very common strength, okay? Yeah, so people tell you, especially if you're a man up, you know? All right, next. That was just an interesting fact. So now we're going to do a practical test, although we'll not have time. I'd like you to actually take, if you're on a computer, take a tab and just open the VIA website, because I'd like us to find out from the 24 character strengths we've just gone through, which are the 5 top strengths, okay? We don't have time to do the entire test, it's long. So all I want you to do is to be able to open up the VIA in case you haven't, so that you bookmark or you save that page, and you can do that later. So if you don't know how to bookmark, you just go to the top right in your Google Chrome and you press the star, so it will remain there. Next time you open your browser, you can actually do that. So it's really interesting for you to find out your top strengths. When I did the skill, I listed my top strengths and I always go back to them. I like referring to them to remind myself, especially when you're going through tragedy, you need to remember, you know, these are actually your inner values. This is your, you know, your strength. This is your character strength. Okay, next. So the website is called VIA. So yeah, next. So we do have 24 character strengths. I'll be sharing the website soon. I'm sure you can also open it from your end, values in action. And we have different amounts. We've said that this is very important to note. Each one of us has character strengths, but they're in different levels. So we talk about 5 top or main strengths. They come naturally. When you do these things, you feel energized and satisfied. And when others see them, you know, in us, we feel understood. So remember, your strengths can grow and change as you get older. So they're not fixed. You can also discover and develop. These are very important aspects. The nature-nurture debate, you can actually strengthen your strengths. So can you think of ways that your strengths can be like a treasure? How do you think they are of benefit to you? So if you have some character strength, how do you think this can be a treasure? So that's just a reflection question for all of us. In what ways? So let's go to the next slide. So our strengths are like treasures in many ways. They are valuable, very valuable. Okay, they are hidden, and often, sometimes we'll need help to find them. Someone will come and say, "Oh, you are really a forgiving person." So many people would never have forgiven this kind of behavior. Sometimes people will have to say these things to you so that you actually find your top strengths or your character strength. Then they make you very happy when you discover them, and you can share them with others to make them happy too. So they are shareable. You don't have to keep them for yourself. Next. So here is the link. Go to viacharacter.org, and then you will see the survey of character strength. If you just Google on your browser, VIA survey of character strength, it pops up. It's a free self-assessment. It takes about 10 minutes. Very important for you to actually discover and understand your best qualities. So out of the 24, it will spot the 5 top ones. And so that the idea is you get to know your strengths, and then you can create your own well-being journey. After you discover your own top 5 strengths, try to use them. I actually have had them engraved onto a cup. And this cup is the kind that changes color when you put hot water. So whenever I take my chai, and Kenyan chai is the best, any of you who are Kenyans here. And so when I take my chai, my cup glows with all my character strengths. It's good to always remind yourself. And then you try to spot others using their strength also. So that's quite important. So I'd like to take some sharing now. Have you done the VIA character strengths survey before? So if you already have done this, let me have a yes. Just type yes or no. Have you done this skill? I want to know if you know your character strengths or not. So how many people here have done the VIA? Okay, I already see yes, yes. We are a very enlightened crowd. And somebody is saying, awesome presentation, I'm enlightened. Okay, yes, yes. Then somebody said no. Okay, so this is your chance now. Just open up the tab. We'll not have time to do it. You do it on your own because it's also a private assessment. And then it's good for you to remember these things. Another no, most people are yes. I think that should be the end of the webinar. We all know about all these things. Okay, I'm kidding. But most of us have done it. Only a very few people have not done it. So please take time and do this, and then put a reminder somewhere on your so that you can start to apply your strengths to finding greater well-being. So I'm seeing about 3 no's so far, if I'm not wrong. 3 or 4 of them. Yeah, 3 of them. So, okay, so please do that on your own. Next. So now we're going to do this survey together. This one will be really interesting, and I want you to answer, to what degree are the following statements true of you personally? So we are picking just one strength, and we are going to be taking some measure of it. Okay, so there's a Likert scale here. Answer bluntly as you know you are at the present, not what you wish to be. Okay, so you use your real self, not your ideal self, to answer this. So indicate the number applicable next to each item from this Likert scale. So this one has 9 items. Again, now we are measuring one particular character strength. Okay, so the previous one I was talking about is knowing which of the 24 are your 5 top strengths. This one is different. This one is one particular character strength. We want to know to what degree you have it. So first thing, take a piece of paper or your notebook and write number 1 to 9. So question 1 to 9, just write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then you're going to write the answer from the Likert scale. And if it is 1 on the scale, it means very much unlike me. 2 means unlike me. 3, neither like me nor unlike me. 4 means like me. And 5 means very much like me. Okay. So now you can take some self-reflection. And if you've already written number 1 to 9, we can start with the first one. Number 1, I like to welcome guests at my residence. So is that 5 very much, or 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. So against question 1, write your answer in either number 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. I hope we are together. If anybody is lost, let me know. So I'll go faster now. Question 2, I enjoy spending ample time with my guests. So write your answer next to number 2. Number 3, even if guests come unannounced, I can welcome them without a sour face. What's your answer? Right. Number 4, having taken care of the logistics, I sit and have long conversations with my guests. Okay, number 5, I get disturbed when a family or community member walks in with a guest for a meal. What's your answer? Write the answer next to number 5. Number 6, I go out of my way to prepare good food and drinks for guests. 7, even if I sleep on a couch, I make sure that my guests have a good place to sleep in. So write your answer again is number 7. 8, I just welcome guests out of politeness, not because I enjoy being with them. All right. Then question 9, the last one. I make sure that my guests have better food and drinks that I would normally have. I make sure that my guests have better food and drinks than I would normally have. So what's your answer? All right, so now let us see the scoring. So I'd like you to reverse score question 5 and 8. You can see them highlighted in green. Okay, so circle question 5, circle question 8. Okay, so now let's take the total score. So the ones that you have reverse scored, it means that what you do is if the answer was, so let's go back to the previous slide. By reverse scoring, what we always mean in testing, what we mean is if your answer was 5, change it to 1 for question 5 and 8 only. Okay. If your answer was 4, change it to 2. Okay. If your answer was 3, it remains 3, no problem. If the answer was 2, change it to 4. If the answer was 1, change it to 5. So you change around the answers then before you add up. So that's what we mean by reverse score. So for question 5 and question 8, you change the score from what it is to the reverse of it because it's a negative question. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So now add them all up and let's see. So we talk about 2 elements of hospitality, which is actually a character strength. Logistical hospitality, and you can see some of those questions there, like questions 6, 7, and 9 are talking about logistical hospitality. What do you do to actually host people? And this is a very interesting skill. Soon we will know who invented it. And then we do have other items here that have another aspect of hospitality we call dispositional hospitality, how you are as a person, not necessarily all of the different things you have to prepare and do when you're being hospitable. And we do have jobs now just on hospitality, as you know, even the other day, I think it was Ikigai. They wanted somebody who actually they can hire who is hospitable. I think that job is still there. So after this presentation, you can go and apply for that job. It's all about well-being. Okay, somebody's already commenting there. So I do want to announce that this is the invention of one of us, our very senior mentor, colleague, chair of the association, Professor Selvam. We are so honored that he actually invented this. So it actually is called the Tangaza Hospitality Skill. And there's a book chapter in this book called Embracing Wellbeing in Diverse African Contexts, Research Perspectives. That was actually published, a whole book chapter in Springer. Please take time to actually look it up. If you just Google Tangaza hospitality skill, the Springer chapter will come up and you can read it in full. And maybe I would just like to pick on Prof at the end. He can tell us exactly what do you say to guests when they have overstayed. What do you actually tell them so that they can leave? Because, you know, in Africa, we are always very hospitable. Somebody argued that, you know, Africa has hosted so many people, and maybe that was the reason it was colonized. I'm not sure. But anyway, that was, again, somebody's opinion. But it's very interesting that in Africa, we are expected to be hospitable. So it would be interesting for you to also take a measure. And if you want right now, you can share your results. Remember, this is your private assessment. You don't have to. It's not a must. I'm just saying for those who feel they would like to share, want to know your scores. So did you manage to add them up? I know some of you may not like it when it gets so people-y and so many visitors all the time and all that. Somebody says 35. Mwene, thank you for sharing your scores. Let's see who else and how many did you? People here are very hospitable. So we have 36, Lois Ndongo. Anybody else who has added up the scores? Anyone else? Okay. Aha, 33, Giovanna Nyagabuji, Angela 38, Wanjiko 17, admin. Please write your real name so we know your character. I'm just kidding. 37, good. Nancy Mayara 35, Margaret Nyaga 41. Wow, thank you so much, everyone. I can see you actually following. And those of you who have not had a chance to do the test, just do it on your own later. All right, next. Yeah, keep the scores coming. I want to see how we are doing. So hospitality is a character strength. It's the latest in the list. It is not in the original 24, but this is an indigenous invention, innovation of one of us, Prof. Selvam. And so now we can see the contribution of the Global South in the field of positive psychology. At least when Prof. Selvam is there, we feel represented. So we know that the practice of the value of hospitality contributes to individual and communal well-being in the society. So we had the mental health continuum scale, short form MHCSF, and the hospitality scale that were used to investigate the correlation between hospitality as a character strength and human flourishing among 308 young African adults. This was a student of Prof who did the study, found significant positive correlation, I believe it was, and we were able to see overall hospitality is connected or associated with human flourishing. So this finding is a big insight in promoting the practice of hospitality for human flourishing. Next. So congratulations to the inventor. One inventor, not inventors, that was a typo. So that is Prof. Selvam. And this is actually the abstract from that study. It just basically saying how this study was measured, and all these wonderful things are contributions within positive psychology field, because now it has eventually been listed as a character strength, but we would like more promotion in the global space so that actually it is known to be a good character strength. This is a very indigenous and wonderful innovation to come up with a normed scale where people can actually say that you know, in our field, there's a lot of borrowing from the global north. So I'm very excited when I see things like this, you know. We don't have enough psychological studies on any of the character strengths for this part of the world. So we need to do more on this, and we need to emulate this wonderful example. Good, next. So what are the 6 domains of this 24 character strengths? I hope you remember. I should have hidden the answer so that first you say. Did anybody come up with a song on how to remember this? Wisdom, courage, humanity, very important. Justice, temperance, and transcendence. All of these things are what somebody says still composing, Dr. Carol Chakwa. Okay, we do need to have these things in mind, because this is actually the crux of how we measure character strengths is at the core of positive psychology. So please, I've repeated this so you don't forget. Okay. Come up with a song, an acronym, a poem, anything. All right, next. So why are character strengths important? They enhance well-being. So you can develop your self-confidence, self-awareness. If you know this is what happens, we say, if you're like a tea bag in hot water, now we see your true color. So when you know your character strengths, really, you can actually use them. And because you know what is there in greater quantities, then those ones are what you apply in situations. And the ones that are in small quantities, you can strengthen or improve them. That's the whole point. So obviously, working with strengths does not mean you ignore weaknesses. There's a lot of misconceptions about what positive psychology is about. When we talk about, for instance, positive discipline, nowadays we've been doing a lot of parenting training. We have a powerhouse of parenting training here, Dr. Carol Chakwa, and you'll hear parents saying, oh, now you want us to stop beating the children, right? But when we say a strengths-based approach to discipline improves performance, what are we saying? We're saying you don't have to always focus on the negative. So we are all born with a negativity bias. Human beings, the brain is basically more conservative in nature, and it will give more weight to bad experiences because some people will argue that maybe it came from evolution, that over time, the caveman was very alert to danger. And so it seems like the way the brain is wired, okay, just generally more leans towards more negative emotions. And that's why we say bad news travels very fast, And in media, we know media does have a negativity bias as well. But we know that even experiencing your negative emotion can have 3 times impact than your positive emotion. So the point of us focusing on character strength is to broaden and highlight what is good in order to counteract the innate human bias towards negativity. Take a strength like gratitude. So if you had a really rough day, maybe just before this webinar, you received news, like just before this webinar, I received news of the death of a very loved one. But you remember that actually when you have character strength, you can also remember all the other things you are grateful for, okay? Instead of highlighting on this one thing, that was probably negative or bad. So those are the reasons why character strengths are important. I don't know if you can think of any other reasons. I had asked you earlier why you think your strengths are a treasure. So think about it. Why do you think they are important? Next. So I'm going to add some humor, some Kenyan humor. If you are Kenyan, you've probably heard about character development. And from this page, I just got this from Paukwa page. There's a saying that goes, experience is the best teacher. It doesn't mean that it's the easiest way to learn a lesson. So every once in a while, we go through difficult or uncomfortable situations that force us to grow. So we as Kenyans describe these instances as kupigwa character development. Okay, tell us, what was the most recent event that you had enrolled into the so-called Kenya Institute of Character Development? So can anybody share just by typing in the chat? For a lot of you, when you're using measuring character, you're talking about ile character development, something that made you grow, made you learn a lesson too fast, too soon, and too much. Okay, I think we are still thinking about it. Okay, I think none of us here wamepigwa character development. All right, that was just on a light note. Okay, let's move on. So the golden mean, okay. Catherine says, kunyorosha na maisha Kanairo. Yes, especially those Nairobians. They know Kanairo is Nairobi, so a lot of people here, they know right now with the cost of living, there's just been a lot of changes in people's character and, things like that. So here's a very important phrase that we use a lot in the field. It's called the golden mean of character strength. So who is the perfect person? We don't talk about an ideal or a perfect person. Instead, we talk about strength overuse, strength underuse, or optimal use. So optimal use of your character strength means how you can express the right combination of strength to the right degree and in the right situation, okay? So the idea that actually you can create for yourself an optimal use of character strength, okay? So remember, it's good to be courageous, but not all the time. Sometimes you need to drop the courage in a different setting where humility is concerned. For instance, you go to see a doctor, a lot of doctors, have a little chip on their shoulder. So if you go telling them you know everything and they are the ones who have studied medicine, maybe that courage will not be useful, but you have to know the optimal use of that information in order that in that situation, you can apply your character strength. So these are very important concepts that we all need to understand. The golden mean is about optimal use, just how you combine them and how you apply them contextually. All right. Next. So some new directions in character strengths research is Frontiers recently published 15 articles at once. This was a very, very a big gesture by scientists saying, okay, we are now at an anniversary point. We want to celebrate character strength research. And so this professor in Israel called Hadassah Littman Obadia led a special issue with 15 articles, and they're all free to access. Frontiers is one of the top journals for those of us in academia. So how exactly to apply character strength in adversity, morality, their relationship to virtues. We talked about virtues and vices, okay? And then values, domains of life. We have a lot of domains of life where we need to keep unpacking. These are future areas of study we need to see. For example, how do we apply character strength, in different domains of life? We can talk about in marriage or in studying or anywhere, in the workplace. Spirituality, that's a very popular one because a lot of people will associate the first time they heard about character was actually in a spiritual class, maybe Sunday school or madrasa. And then obviously the practice of character strength. So what's very interesting is that scientists are taking up what we have known in the age-old wisdom of a lot of religions and a lot of spirituality. And that's why for the template on Grant, for example, you can now start to measure the science of spirituality. Okay, so this is very interesting. I think you should go and check out Frontiers Character Strengths 15 articles editorial. Next. So we also are talking about how to apply the practice of character strengths for practitioners, okay? How can you embody character strength as you continue to educate clients in supporting them, because we are all about boosting well-being and handling adversity. So we have so many different practitioners doing lots of studies, and now there are bodies of knowledge that are forming and being integrated into the scholarly discussion. Next. So we can talk about a strengths-based practitioner. So if any of you here are actually interested in the application of character strength in your work, we can talk about somebody who embodies character strength, who can educate on strengths. Okay, those are some elements of the strengths-based practitioner, because the study that listed the elements found that people were throwing around the word character strength-based practitioner, and it wasn't well defined. And so they defined these elements: somebody who energizes or uplifts, okay, somebody who empowers others, somebody who faces adversity, because as much as we want to say it is our techniques that work when we are doing practitioner work, actually a lot of times people are emulating how we are also facing adversity. Thank you, Nora Nyongesa. It's my interest, awesome application. I use it a lot, okay. And then this scholar also talked about someone who connects, okay, engendering connection with yourself, with your world, with your, with each other, even the practitioner and the client relationship connection. And then who cultivates seeds, okay? So the idea is not just plucking out weeds or the negative, which has been the foray of earlier schools of psychology, like clinical or, others. But now when we talk about cultivating, so instead of prescribing, we use descriptive language, okay? So instead of telling people so much what to do, we just describe, and augment and help people increase their awareness to explore positive action. Next. So in summary, there are 24 character strengths. There are quite a number of different ways you can use to memorize this, and they fall under 6 domains. And you can see that infographic there with all of the 24 character strengths. I'd like to know, for the ones who have done the skill before, do you still remember which are the top 5 of the 24 character strengths? Does anybody remember them offhand, or you'll have to go and check? So these are things you need to keep present to yourself at all times. So if you can remember your 5, just type in the chat so that we can see. I guess we are trying to download them now from our minds, but it's good to write them somewhere. Okay, somebody says yes. Yeah, you can remember the top 5 out of 24. Wonderful. Yeah, because those are the ones that, and most of the time when you do this skill, you'll find that, yeah, people have told you about this. Obviously, we know a single assessment doesn't tell you the whole truth of your life, but we always use it with a pinch of salt. But most of the time you'll see it is accurate because it's a self-test. You're the one who has filled in the answer. So it's really reflecting what you had answered in the survey. So a lot of us are saying, yes, you remember the top 5 of the 24. That's amazing. Yes, I'd like those of the few who had not done the skill to do that. And also those who did it and did not remember, please go back and put them somewhere where it's visible that you can remind yourself from time to time. Put them on a cup like me. Somebody has even listed her top 5. Nancy Banyara, thank you. Love for learning, gratitude, zest, hope, bravery, and honesty. Thank you so much. Next. So 6 principles, just a summary to remember. Character strengths are capacities, okay? Then when we talk about capacity, we mean that each one of us has, character strength. Then character and character strength are dimensional. They exist on a spectrum. So we can talk about the degree to which you have a particular, we've just done a scale on a particular character strength invented here called hospitality. Then character is plural, okay? So we never just talk about character as a singular thing, okay? Then all the 24 matter. All the 24 character strengths matter. Then there are many kinds of strength, okay? So that's important to remember. The 24, they're different and they're in 6 domains. And it's not only about being, but it's also about doing. And this is emphasized by this quote: knowing is not enough, we must apply. Willing is not enough, we must do. So if you are being those things and not doing them, then actually you're not fully applying your character strength. Next. So some more future directions. We need more research into the character strength criteria. For instance, now we have just added hospitality to the already established ones. And then obviously we need to now do a lot of conceptual studies to establish additional and causal links. Causal means cause and effect, okay, between character strength and various outcomes. So what do we want to achieve? And using backward design, we can say, okay, so these are the character strengths you need to achieve this outcome, okay? Then exploring antecedents to character strengths and social or community outcomes. So what are the precursors of character strength that lead to certain community outcomes, okay? Those are very important. We haven't done enough research on that. These are just some future suggestions. So if any of you are thinking of doing studies in this field, or if any of you want to partner even with me on the template on grant, let me know. I think the deadline is July 7 or something, or July 9. Then examine long-term and short-term changes in character strength through multi-level lenses. Okay, very important. We need more studies on how do you check how somebody has changed short-term, long-term. In organizations, this is critical, especially, of course. Then further study on the use of character strength in times of adversity, crisis, trauma, and hardship. Very important. In trauma, we are now talking about post-traumatic growth, and that's where PTG really influences trauma work from the field of positive psychology. How does one move from coping to resilience to growth? And exactly like what is happening now to our brothers and sisters in Sudan, how are they actually using character strengths to cope. How do you remind yourself of your inner values when suddenly your government goes mad and everybody is running away and suddenly you had a home and a life and now you're a refugee, you know? So those are future study ideas. Next. All right, character versus reputation, a very interesting one. This is what we know, especially on the streets. Be more concerned with your character than your reputation, because your character is what you really are, while your reputation or outward personality is merely what others think that you are. So I thought that was a good way to just close the presentation. Next. So these are some references, and I'll be happy to take your sharing now. Any questions or comments? Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you very much, Dr. Wangari. That was a very informative presentation. Maybe as people think about their questions, maybe I can just share my personal reflection of your presentation. Knowing is not enough, we must apply. Willing is not enough, we must do. I think character strengths are things that if we keep reflecting on them over our lifetime, we get stronger at them, and they become a resource, a very important resource for us. So it's important that we are constantly thinking about them and inventing ways of applying them and seeing them in other people also, and even mentioning them so that other people can also start to think about their strengths. Then I have a question for you, Dr. Wangari. So about hospitality, I was just thinking about that and I realized there is rural hospitality and urban hospitality. You know, by the statistics show by 2050, 70% of the world will be urbanized. And when people live in urban areas, there's less connection with family and familiar people like that, which can reduce their interactions in terms of guests and even the kind of work schedules people have in the urban areas are such that they may not accommodate hospitality during the week, maybe over the weekend. So what can you say about rural versus urban hospitality, if you've thought about it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Thank you. So I agree in my personal and professional opinion. Yeah, you can just remove the slides now. Thanks. So that we see each other. So we do have a very distinct difference. I recently wrote a newspaper article in the People Daily on postpartum depression in women and why some women are killing their children. You heard of the sad stories that were going around recently. And so that one has to do a lot with the fact that these women, these mothers are actually isolated, you know. So a lot of them are ending up without enough social support. So obviously urban spaces having generally smaller households, living areas, and disconnection maybe from the larger family. For those who are not living with the extended family, maybe you travel, emigrate out of home for work, and some people are even in different countries as well, not just rural to urban in the same country. Some people have also gone abroad and now they're completely disconnected. And this article I wrote, especially like for mothers with young babies just needing a nap, and they needed their mother to come over and take care of their baby so that they can take a nap, and mom is so far away. So yes, we do have quite a distinct difference. And I think that it is high time as practitioners, those of us who are interested in applying character strength, is that we just still remember there are ways to create community, even in urban spaces for most of us, you know. They're still quite active. Their communities actually ready, you know. There are ready communities around. And I think women fare better also in just connecting and doing these things. Although in my article, I suggested that those ones who may be suffering postpartum depression or maybe have special children may struggle because of the social stigma. But obviously, we do have a charmer next door. We do have enough communities ready, and religious communities are always at hand, to create that sense of community. Then we also need to encourage, especially urbanites, to create positive, healthy socialization spaces. I was speaking to college students. I work a lot with college students as well. And they were telling me, we don't like, some of them, they said, we don't like the noise in clubs and we don't have nice places to hang out. So that's calling on us to also work with urban planners for those of us who might find, clubbing not the best place to create community. Where else can we go? So I think we do have a big gap in our both theorizing and documenting. I think practitioners are doing a lot of work, but we also probably not documenting what is best practice in terms of, especially for the challenges in the urban areas. Some other challenges in rural areas will be the socioeconomic divide, and you'll find that even with trying to be hospitable, sometimes African hospitality can be very expensive, because you won't just give people a few snacks, you have to cook a lot of good food. So, so that is always sometimes a challenge in the village, and some people will judge you if you don't have meat, on the diet, while we know meat is not all that for everyone, Some of us here, are even vegetarian, but, an African buffet is not very cheap to serve. So those are some of the challenges also in the rural areas, but very interesting. And I think it's up for further study for us to check application of hospitality as different in urban areas and in rural areas and across socioeconomic divides and gender and other factors. So I think that is a very interesting thing. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So we welcome any other questions that you may have for our speaker.
There's a question there, Mary, by Dr. Wairimu.
Ah, okay. Welcome, Doctor. I wasn't looking at the chat, but please welcome to ask your question.
It's in the chat if you check. Dr. Wairimu Churu.
Oh, okay. She says, I loved this presentation. Thank you, Dr. Wangari. Do you think the concept of strength overuse is either contradictory or a misnomer? Should we perhaps call this character strength abuse, which is in fact a weakness rather than overuse?
Yeah. So I think overuse and abuse can still be distinct. Okay. And thank you for your compliment. And you're welcome. So I think we actually can say strength overuse exists as distinct from abuse because, abuse is using, abuse just means abnormal use or using badly something, and overuse would be, a bit too much in a particular incident, but you can have a bit too much. That's not necessarily bad, just a little bit done a bit too much. So like I'll tell you, one of my examples is one of my top 5 character strengths is energy. And this is something that many people told me long before I even did the test, the VIA skill. And people said, oh, you always have vibrancy, energy, you do so many, and you seem to have zest for life, And obviously, sometimes when you're in a very formal situation like here, you have to tone down the energy, even if you are 10 times excited, But you can have overuse, I think, which is not necessarily abuse. So, but I like your opinions. I think they are always the beginning of any kind of a study, okay? I think they are very important when you have opinions about something. It's really critical. Because you then get a way to create a full study and check this empirically by doing it, scientifically with many people. So, yeah, thank you. I think we know a lot of things from streets or from everyday life, but we never thought that these things can actually be scientifically measured. So, Auntie.
Any other questions?
Okay, there was a question I had thrown to Prof just to, I don't know if he's here, just to provoke him, just to tease him, the inventor of the Tangaza hospitality scale. I say to him, if a guest has overstayed, how do you politely tell them to go? So is Prof here? Maybe he can answer that. Just tell us a little bit about how he thought about the scale and inventing it.
Sorry, Joyce, Father Salvan is not around.
Okay, all right. He'll
Yeah.
get the recording and he can tell us later.
Okay.
I think those of us interested in studying hospitality should contact him for further studies on the same.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
As we wait for any other questions, I can read some of these comments. Thank you, Dr. Wangari, for an awesome presentation. Thank you, PPAK, for your hospitality. Thank you, Pauline, for that. Carmen Moniz, our previous presenter. Thanks for a very interesting presentation. Pastor Mweni Wambua, will you share the slides? Dr. Wangari, you let us know. And about the slides, they're usually uploaded on our Facebook page, always. Then Harry Etunje says, this is my first time to join. Do you share the slides to interested participants? So I think I've just answered that. We have a very vibrant Facebook page, Positive Psychology Association of Kenya. You'll find all the webinars, the history of this association there. You can always catch up on them. You can, yeah, you can be able to watch them at your own time. Yeah, so I think that's it. Any other questions before we end? Petronilla, I think we can end the recording now. Dr. Carol, do you have any announcements?
Good evening, everyone, and good whatever time it is on your side of town or the country or the globe.